Judge's Corner is brought to you by CoolStuffInc.com and GatheringMagic.com. Support our show by visiting both websites. Now it's time for Judge's Corner with David Green.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Judge's Corner. Today we're going to be talking about the different formats of Magic the Gathering. Formats are usually made up of different sets in conjunction with other sets, or sometimes stand alone. You usually find about the most common ones at your local card shop, such as Standard or Draft. Today we're going to examine them and a couple of other formats and explain how they work. First, let's break them down into two types, limited and constructed. Limited formats are those in which you are provided with cards to make your own deck when you show up, while in constructed events, you bring your own pre-constructed deck of cards. Let's talk about constructed first, since it's probably the one you're all most familiar with. The most common constructed format is Standard, which includes the two most recent blocks of Magic sets and the most current core set. For example, Innistrad block with Innistrad, Dark Ascension, and Avacyn Restored, Return to Ravnica block with Return to Ravnica, Gatecrash, and Dragon's Maze, and Magic 2013. There is also a brief period where the next core set is also legal, in this case Magic 2014. What happens is when the next core set is released in the summer, all of the previous sets and the core set remain legal until the fall when the next set in the new block is released. Then the previous entire block and the previous core set fall off, in this case when Theros became legal. Block constructed is another format where you only play with cards from a single block, like Return to Ravnica block only containing Return to Ravnica, Gatecrash, and Dragon's Maze cards. Modern is a relatively new format where players can only use cards that were printed in Magic sets from 8th edition and beyond. A good rule of thumb is that only cards in modern card frames are legal, but that's not entirely true. Cards that were printed in supplemental sets like Primal Vigor or Toxic Deluge are not legal in Modern because they have yet to be printed in modern legal sets, and cards with future borders like Steamflogger Boss or Tarmogoyf, or cards that were time-shifted like Pendelhaven or Tribal Flames are also legal because they were printed in sets after 8th edition. There's also a ban list currently established for Modern that can be found in the description below. Next, there's Legacy and Vintage, which are both eternal formats. They allow you to use any cards from any set or supplemental product in Magic's existence. However, with Vintage, there are limitations on how many of some cards you can use, allowing you to only play one copy of certain cards. And some cards are banned because of their legal or dexterity issues. Legacy is similar to Vintage, except instead of limiting the number of certain cards you can use, cards are just outright banned because of their power level. The same dexterity and anti-cards are still banned. Cards that were not printed in Magic sets or supplemental products, or cards that are just generally not legal, like unhinged cards, are also not legal in these formats. There are also constructed formats that are more casual, like Commander, where you use a single legendary creature in 99 unique cards with special rules, or Pauper, where you use a deck of 60 or more cards that were once or currently are commons. There's Peasant with the same rules as Pauper, except uncommon cards are allowed too, and a plethora of other casual formats. Two-Headed Giant is another constructed format, but typically you'll only ever see it played in conjunction with limited formats. Two-Headed Giant uses a unified deck construction rule when playing constructed with it, so that you cannot use any more than 4 copies of a single card, excluding cards that break this rule, between the two decks. For example, you can only play with 4 copies of Eternal Witness in one deck, and 0 in the other, or 3 in 1, or 2 in 2. You cannot play 4 in 1, or even 4 in 4 between the two decks. You also follow whatever format's banned or restricted list you're using to play Two-Headed Giant with. So if this was Modern Two-Headed Giant, Dark Depths would also not be legal. In addition to that, Ureo Soratami Ascendant is exclusively banned in Two-Headed Giant, regardless of the format. To learn more, check out our video on Two-Headed Giant. Next are limited formats, which include Sealed, Draft, Cube, and a few others. Sealed is where you show up, are given a couple of packs, which are your card pool, and make a 40 or more card deck with what's provided. Typically, it'll be out of the most recent block or core set. Then you play somewhat normal matches of Magic. Draft is similar to Sealed, but instead of being given a pool of cards, you open one pack at a time, pick the best card, and pass it in a specific order to the next person. You also, in turn, get a new pack, and repeat this process until all of the cards have been taken from all of the packs. Hopefully, your picks weren't random, because next you're going to construct a 40 or more card deck with those cards that you drafted, and then play games of Magic against your opponents. Normally, there are pods of 8 people in a draft, but in some cases the pods can be larger or smaller if need be. Cube is similar to normal draft, except the draft pool is custom made by individuals. People typically put their cards randomly together into packs of 15 cards and draft them like normal drafts from there. This can be a lot of fun, and I encourage you to take a look at this format. Now, there are a couple other formats that we didn't talk about, some that are exclusive to online only, like More Basic, or some that are played in draft, like Rochester Draft, and a few others that are created when you combine current formats with other formats or change and twist them. We didn't have time to cover them all, so we're not going to include some of the more outlandish ones in this episode. If you have any questions, make sure to send us an email at judgescorner@gatheringmagic.com. And until next time, make sure to shuffle thoroughly, play at a reasonable pace, and remember to back up your cards before you format them.